Welcome to Magellan Motorcycle Tours. This is going to be one of a little section of videos that we're going to be doing to help you guys get prepped before the trips. As you probably know, all the tours are run with the help, in inverted commas, of various different sat-nav devices. So this video specifically is how to help you get your device set up. Make sure you're familiar with it before you go on the tour, and we'll go through some little tips and tricks on how to use them and to sort some of the obvious sort of standard problems that people encounter when they're on their tours, and how you can get those fixed so you can keep riding on during the day. So the best thing to do when you get started, once you get your tour pack through from us, there's lots and lots of documentation in there, but there's one called sat-nav setup, troubleshooting, etc. There's a couple of pages on here of various different things about how to choose the right sat-nav if you haven't already bought one, essentials of how to use it on tour, troubleshooting advice, how to get things set up. So this sort of goes through in a bit more detail what we'll be touching on in this video. So once you've gone through that, you're going to want to start loading the device up. Before you do that, I'll explain the format that we send you your routes in. So routes are put as GPX or ITN files. These are tiny little files that we send to you on Dropbox, and you just transfer those over onto your device. But the actual files themselves, a lot of people think that they are routes. They're not. Actually, that's a common misconception. The files are actually just a very small text list of the latitude and longitude points of the stops that we use on each day. That's the only information that's in them. Then when you transfer those files onto your TomTom or Garmin or phone or any other unit that you use, it's actually the unit itself that calculates the route for you in between each of the stops. So what we do when we design these trips is we choose the stops along the route so that over the wide breadth of different sat-navs that everybody uses, they will calculate the closest approximation for everybody. Having said that, if you've been away on tours with us before, or if you've used sat-navs in group riding before, you'll know that not every sat-nav will calculate the exact same route. Even if you have two devices that are exactly the same with the same software on, they will sometimes disagree a little bit. There's various different reasons for this. One of the main ones is the actual GPS chips that they use in the devices aren't all absolutely identical, and they don't have the same sort of margin for error. So some of them will be accurate to within 5 meters, some to within 10 meters. So they'll sometimes think, oh, if you take this little road down here, it's going to save you 5 seconds on your route. Whereas your friend's device might think he's 10 meters further on, so he won't go down that way. This isn't a huge deal. What it tends to mean is when you're riding along during the day, people will take slightly different routes going in and out of towns, but the actual linking sections will always be either exactly the same or very close. And certainly the important roads, you know, when you're riding the big passes or the really famous bits that we've picked for you to ride, whichever way you've got it set up, as long as you've got the avoidances set correctly, you are going to go on those roads. So that's what the files are, roughly how the devices do them. Quite a useful thing to do, which we do go through in the sat-nav setup file, is to test this yourself before you go away on a trip. So to do this, you can go onto motogoloco.com, so you just pop that into your browser and you can create a route. So you can start at your house and maybe finish it somewhere that you know, and then you can add 2 or 3 points along the way, just so that you get used to navigating along a route that's got going from A to B, but via C, D and E. So you can practice what that would look like, how you can skip waypoints, all that sort of thing. MotoGoLoco is free, it takes about 5 minutes to create a route, and then you can use the systems that we're about to go through to load them onto your device and test it out and play around. The sat-navs that come away with us, you know, we have hundreds of people come away every year. Everybody has some sort of small issue when you're away on a tour. That's totally normal. The guides are used to this. We are sort of black ops sat-nav experts and can fix pretty much everything. But it's worth sort of trying to get to grips with your own unit before you come away as well. A useful backup to have if you've got a smartphone is an app called Maps.me. It's a free app, or it might be 50p, and you can download the country that you're going to. So that means if worst case scenario, your sat nav dies, or you drop it, or it falls off the bike, or you leave it in the previous hotel, and you are actually lost. In the tour pack we do tell you to take maps, but let's say you've lost your maps as well. If you've got this little app on your phone, you can just type in the name of the hotel and it will route you straight there. Obviously you can always call the guide and we'll come and get you, but it's quite a nice little useful sort of backup to have Maps.me on there as well. So that's the sort of the intro to it, and now we'll go on and we'll talk about actual devices a little bit more specifically. Just before we do that, I'll quickly run through a little bit about our tour packs. So the tour packs that you get, you go through all the different days. You'll have a bit of information about the hotel you go to each day, some stuff about what your riding route's like, and then we detail all of the stops that you're doing. So each one of these corresponds to a stop on your route. Now we have the addresses on there, but most importantly we have the latitude and longitude coordinates of every single stop that we go to. Now while loading routes up onto your sat-nav feels like the easiest way of doing it, you can have problems with them. Sometimes they don't work. Always the best way to do it, if you do get stuck, or even if you just want to do this from the off, this is how I do it, is you just get to your first stop, and then when you get back on the bike, you type in the 12-digit code into your latitude and longitude, and then that will just take you from your first coffee stop to lunch, just as a single element of the route. And then when you get off at lunch, you just then pop the next one in. It takes 10 seconds each time. It means you will never have an issue of accidentally going to the wrong route. You're not going to have problems with the maps, all that sort of stuff. So because you'll have your tour pack with you, you can always go back in and use these latitude and longitudes. But yeah, as I said, now we'll go on and we'll talk about individual devices in a little bit more detail.
So just while we're doing this bit, it's probably a good time to mention that Garmin's usually come bundled with various different bits of software for transferring files over. So be that Garmin Express, or I can't remember what the name of the other one is. There's a routing piece of software that they recommend to use. Don't use either of those to load these routes in. They can be really buggy. They make all sorts of mistakes. It makes it much more complicated. Dragging it and dropping it is by far the easiest way of doing it, and takes 30 seconds. Right, okay, so to start off, you just want to plug your unit into your computer. We're doing this on a Mac, but the principle is exactly the same. So you plug your device in, and on a Garmin, it should come up with a little picture of a computer being plugged into a unit, and then it will pop up on the screen as an external drive, which should happen any minute. The little guy's popped up in the top right hand corner now, so you open it up. As I said, this is exactly the same on a PC, so you just open up the thumb drive so you can see what there is. There's lots of different folders in there. You want to go into GPX and open it up, and then it will be probably empty, unless you've been on tour before, in which case you've probably got various other old files in there. But you open up the GPX folder, and then we're going to use a file that we're using called test route, but normally you'd have like between 11 and 22 of these, because each file is for a different day. So you just drag it over, let go, drop it in, bosh, that's done. So that's now on the device itself. So then you just go up and you eject this, and then we'll go back to the device and show you how to load the actual route itself into the memory and calculate it.
Right, so we're going to start off with the Garmin units. The actual unit that we're using here is the BMW Motorrad Navigator 6, which is exactly the same as the 5, which is actually just a rebranded 590 Garmin, which we've also got here. The 590 Garmin, the 390, the 395, the 595, they're all pretty much exactly the same. The user interface is almost identical, so this is valid across the whole range of the different Garmins. The older ones, the principles are exactly the same, but some of the menus might look a little bit different, but you still need to do the same sort of stuff to set it up. So the first thing you want to do, this is before you load the routes, you want to make sure that the device has got the right settings on there. So we're going to set the avoidances that we use, and a couple of other little bits and pieces that I'll talk you through as we go along. So first off, you want to go to Settings, Navigation, Avoidances. Now on here, I keep U-turns avoided just because then it will not try and keep taking you back to a road that you've missed for whatever reason. This is quite useful if you're riding with a group and someone else's sat-nav has told them to go a different way. If you don't avoid U-turns, it's not going to recalculate and put you on their route, it's just going to keep taking you back. So you want to avoid U-turns, so to avoid something you have it ticked. You want to avoid motorways, because 99% of the time we don't use motorways, and by avoiding them it keeps you on the nice little back roads that we want. You don't want to avoid major roads, you don't want to avoid traffic, you don't want to avoid ferries, car share lanes. Unpaved roads you can leave on, it doesn't actually really make any difference. We shouldn't use unpaved roads. If you are on one, you've definitely gone wrong. And you also don't want to avoid seasonal closures. So if your avoidance is, you just have unpaved roads, motorways and U-turns, and you have that saved. The other quite important thing, the calculation mode has to be on fastest time. You don't want to be getting it to take you on the shortest route, because then you'll go up people's driveways, and you don't want any of the other ones. The new curvy road feature, which a lot of the units have got, is really good, but it doesn't work on multi-point routes. Obviously not off-road and not shorter distance, so you want fastest time always, and have that set. The other useful thing to do is you want to set your device to be in kilometres, just so that you've got the distances which tally up with the tour pack. So to do that, you go to units and time, and then you go units, kilometres, save. So you've done that, and that's your device then ready to set up. When you're riding on the tour, you can change these avoidances, but it's worth having them in correctly when you first import the route, because sometimes the Garmin's get a bit stuck and they will revert back to the original setting. If you've got the wrong one on, you'll find yourself having to turn motorways on and off every day just to rejig the unit. So it's quite useful to have it set up correctly first. So that's the first bit, and now we'll move on to getting the actual routes themselves loaded up. So we've copied the files over, and they're now on the actual device itself. And what we do is we want to turn it on, and we want to get them to import and calculate. So we get the little guy back on. Takes a minute. It will recognise the fact that there's new routes in here, and it will ask you if you want to import them. Load in the maps. Ignore that. Agree. Turn it on. New routes found. Import to trip planner. Yes. It shows you one called test. If you've got lots on there, then you need to select them all. But we'll just tick that one. As I said, you'll probably have 12, so you just want to tick them all, then click import. So that's now saving it into Trip Planner. So the GPX files are stored in the unit itself, and then it takes it into the Trip Planner and works out the route for you. So that's now in Trip Planner. It's very, very quick to do. And then to actually see the route itself and check that they're on there, you want to go into apps. This is the same on all the different Garmin's. So you go into app, Trip Planner. You can see there's a route there called test, which would normally be called Picos Day 1 or Croatia Day 4 or whatever it is that you're doing. So we'll click that. That will show you the start point, and then how long it is to the next stop, and distances all the way down there, so you can see that. So we've loaded up a route that would look very similar to one on a tour. So a start point, an end point, and then coffee, lunch, coffee. You can see the distance and the time that's going to go, so you can quickly double check this against your tour pack and make sure that that all lines up in the morning first thing. You can click map, so you can view what the route is actually going to look like. That's also very useful, so you can check that you haven't loaded the wrong day, and then roughly what the route's going to be, make sure it tallies up, and then if you press go, that will just start you navigating. On the newer Garmin's, and I think maybe the older 395 as well, when you do load it first, it will ask you which is your next destination. You never want to choose the first one, because there's always a GPX point to start the day, and that's going to be the hotel that you're at. If you choose the first one, it's just going to take you round and round and round trying to find where we've put that flag, and that might be in a flower bed in the car park, because that's where the Latin Long is. So you always want to choose the first stop as your next one. So the first stop would be your first coffee stop, and then you click start. It will then calculate the route, which is all done along the roads. You press go, and then you're good to go. It's locating satellites, obviously, because we're indoors. When you're out on the road, it will just calculate this and do this straight away. So probably what I'll do quickly, I'll take this outside, we'll get it to calculate, and then we'll go on to the next bit about setting up the dashboard. Okay, we're back in the room, got the sat-nav back, the route's been loaded. Obviously we're back inside now, so there's no satellite reception, which is what it says up there, but you've actually got the pink route on there, and this is what it will look like when you're on tour, when you load the day up. So we'll go through the dashboard setup. This is the way that most of the guides have their units, or all the guides have their units set up, and it's definitely the way that we'd recommend doing it because you get a little bit of extra information. So this bar along the bottom, you might be looking at yours and saying, oh well, I don't have that. So you want to go back to the main menu, you go to settings, and you want to find the dashboard setting, which I think is in display. No, it's not. It's in the map and vehicle. Down to the bottom to dashboards, and then you can choose what you want your device to look like. So you can have all these different little bits of information. I think they ship with just the minimal amount, with just like 2 little bits of details. And what you want is you want the one with 4 different ones on the bottom, because then these are all editable. So you save that, and then when you go back to your map, so this is the screen that you see day to day, all of these boxes you can change, and you can have them displaying any bit of information that you want. So if you press one, you can then have it showing the direction of travel, distance to via, elevation, time of day, bearing, blah 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 blah, all these different ones, you know, down to like sunrise times, all this kind of stuff. If you have it set up time to via, this will then tell you how long it's going to take you until you get to your next waypoint, which is normally a coffee or lunch stop. That's a really nice thing to have, because then you can quickly just glance down and think, you know, how much more time have I got on the bike until I can stop and go for a wee and have a coffee and all that sort of stuff. You've got via arrival time, which will tell you what time you actually get there. Again, useful if you're aiming for a lunch stop and you go, actually, I'm not going to get there till 2 p.m. Maybe it's worth stopping somewhere sooner. And then via distance, which is pretty clear, the actual distance to the next via point. So via distance and via time are 2 very important ones, because then you can refer back to your tour pack when you get back on your bike quickly, and you can check the distance and the time, which we always have, to the next waypoint, and make sure those tally. That's a very easy way of making sure you don't come unstuck by having loaded the wrong route or something's gone wrong with it. So you can just glance down and go, oh yeah, it's an hour and a half and it's a 75 kilometres, that's what it says in the tour pack. Happy, that's fine. So that's how you get the sat-nav set up. When you're riding your bike in the day, you've loaded the route up, you've clicked next destination, you've ridden there, you've got off, had a coffee, you've had a chat with everyone, you get back on your bike. Common problem that people do is they then go back into Trip Planner and they reload the route. You don't want to do this. The unit knows where you are, it knows you've hit your first waypoint, and it's just going to take you naturally onto the second one anyway. If you reload the route, then there's a chance you might choose the wrong waypoint to go next. So literally, in the morning, you press go, and then you don't really need to touch the device again unless you're changing avoidances, which we'll come on to in a second. There's another little shortcut on here that a lot of people don't know. If you've got lost, or you're not sure about if you're going to the right place, or your unit doesn't agree with someone else's, you can press the top bar up here, you can press settings and map, and this will show you obviously the map of your route, but it'll also show you where you are along it. So if you'd ridden along and you were here and you've been to these 2 waypoints, they would no longer show, so you would know it's taking you to the next point along the route and you'd know you're going right. Or if one of these waypoints is there and your map's there and your time doesn't add up, you would know, oh, that's because it's taking me to the previous waypoint for whatever reason. So you just need to skip that, which we'll go on to in the next bit. So to skip a waypoint, most of the modern devices, you get a little shortcut up here with a little arrow that goes round the flag. So if you want to skip a waypoint for whatever reason, that would normally be you're riding along and the coffee stop is 5 kilometres off the main road down into a little town. You don't fancy stopping for coffee. You also don't want to have to ride down to it and then come back to the route and then go along. You can just click skip. Or if you've reloaded the route and you're actually going to the hotel and it's trying to take you to a stop behind you, you just click skip and then it'll go on to the next one anyway. So that's the way of doing it. So you can use the little shortcut, or you can go to settings, I think it is, and I think if you scroll down here, there's a skip button there. On the non-BMW and slightly older Garmin's, I'll hold this here so you can see it, if you were on the same view map screen, then you would go to there, and then there's a little skip icon here. And on the really old ones, I think it's in the main settings section, but there's always an option to skip a waypoint if you need to. So make sure you familiarise yourself with your device. Read the manual, Google it, work out how to skip a waypoint. That's a really useful thing to be able to do when you're away. There's another way of starting a route. So let's say you're on this day here and you've got to the lunch stop and you want to go to the next coffee stop, and your sat nav's thrown a wobbly, turn itself off, it's come back on, you're not quite sure what to do. You can go back into apps, trip planner, you choose your day, click go, and then it'll ask you where you want to go next. So you just go down to the one that you know is the next stop. These won't tally with the tour packs, this is just stuff we're doing in Cornwall just to show you what the route would look like. But you'd look down and you go, oh, coffee is in restaurant Florida, in this little town in Rhondda, let's say. So you just go down and find the one that says Rhondda. You would click that one and go start. It will recalculate the route for you, and then you can see on the map there it's skipping these 2 points and it's just taking you to that next one. Alternately, when people do get very lost, or if they just want a short day, maybe, you know, if you just want to hop on the motorway and go to the hotel, then you would just do the same principle. You'd start the route and you just go all the way down to the bottom and just pick the end destination and go start, and then that'll calculate the route just from wherever you are straight to your hotel, done in a straight line, gone. So that's how you do that bit. The next thing to know is how to change your avoidance settings. So on 99% of our tours we don't use the motorway, just back roads, nice little twisties, all that kind of stuff. Occasionally you might need to use a section of motorway, or you might need to tell your sat-nav to use a main road, maybe a ring road to get around a city. So in the tour packs we'll always say this. If you're on a guided tour, the guide will go through with you in the morning. If it's on a self-guided trip, there's just notes at the top. So on this day, for example, it's motorways off all day. It may say motorways on for a section in between 2 coffee stops, and it will tell you down here, turn motorways on for this section and then turn it off here. And all that does is it changes the parameters that the sat-nav's calculating your route in to just take you round a little bit, or maybe save you a bit of time. Or if, as I said before, if you just wanted to crack onto the hotel that day, you just choose hotel, stick motorway on. All of our days on the trips are sort of 5 to 6 hours riding. We design the routes so that if you are tired and you fancy a short day, you can almost always do all the days in 2.5 hours on the motorway if you wanted to. So to change your avoidances, which you'll have set up at the beginning, so you've got a route running in here already, you're going along, and it will give you, there's no satellites in here so it won't show you, but let's say it's 6 hours to the end destination. You go to settings, navigation, avoidances, and you untick motorways and click save. Then you go back to the map, and if you had satellite reception, that will then recalculate, and it will say recalculating at the top, and then pop, it'll turn up with a new arrival time. You can then also check that you're going on the motorway if you wanted to by doing what we did before, which it's not going to let me do, but you press the top, settings, map, and it will show you. And then if you want to turn motorways back off, same principle applies. You go back to navigation, avoidances, avoid motorways again, save. You do have to go back in this way, and then that just recalculates it, and then you're done, and then that's sort of doing the motorway section. Your guides will talk about this with you at various different times in the trip. If you're having problems with your nav and all that kind of stuff, by far the safest way of not having any issues with getting confused with waypoints and what the next stop is, and issues with map loading and all that kind of stuff, is loading the latitude and longitude points at each stop. It takes no time at all. Every single stop will have a little code next to it, lat 43.18179, long minus 4.05252. So to enter this into a sat-nav, if you're not using the trip planner, you would go where to, categories, and this is the same on most of the Garmin's, but again, check your user manual if you can't find it, but you would go down to, I think it's called coordinates, coordinates. And then you have a little entry point here to enter the things. You want to make sure there's a lot of different coordinate types for latitude and longitude. Well, it certainly is according to Garmin. So you just want to click your settings first and check that your format is day dot day. Well, I assume it's day. It's dddd dot dddd. You don't want to be on hours, days, minutes, or any of the other ones because you won't be able to enter the code in. So you just want to make sure you're on this one here. And then all you do is you pop into here, it's always north, so you type north in and then you type the coordinates that were on there, and then when you type west in, same, you go west. If the coordinate is, let's say, -4 point something, then it would be west 0, 0, 4. You don't have to put the minus in, but you always have to fill these noughts out. So 0, 0, 4, and then just the rest of the code in. Click done. I think I've already put this in, yeah, and then it'll show you where you're trying to go, and then you just press go, and it calculates it. So latitude and longitude literally takes no time at all. If you just do it at each stop, you can see straight away how long it is to the next one, and there's no problems there. It's also just a useful way of going back to it if there ever is an issue. Okay, so there's sort of 3 or 4 problems that people encounter, or 3 or 4 common problems that people would encounter if they found a problem with their Garmins. And the Garmins are actually pretty good, it's quite rare they do go wrong. The most common one is you hop back on your bike, you look down at your dashboard, and your mates says it's 1 hour and 40 minutes and 170 kilometres, which is the same as the Tourpack, and yours says it's half that amount of time, but maybe the same distance, or just the figures don't match up. That will normally be because, for whatever reason, it's trying to put you on the motorway, or you might not have the fastest route set, you might have the shortest route set, or you might be going to the wrong waypoint. So you just want to quickly pop back into your settings and navigation and just check you've got fastest time on, check you've got the right avoidances, maybe you haven't changed back to motorways if there was a motorway section, so double check those. And then the other thing to do would be that you just quickly check the map again. So you go into map, again this isn't going to let me, but you click the top bar, the little 3, click view map, and just check that you are going to the correct waypoint. If you're not, you can then edit it the way that we just went through. So that's number 1. I would say, I might have just said that was the most common problem, but I think this next one probably ties for equally most common problem. Is you're driving along, riding along, having a great time, and it tells you to go on the motorway. And you're like, right, I've told it not to take me on the motorway, but it has taken me on the motorway anyway. And you pull over, you think, I don't really want to be going on the motorway. You go into settings, navigation, avoidances, and you're like, oh, motorways are ticked, so I should be avoiding them. There's no rhyme or reason to it. I don't know why they do it. If it has taken you on the motorway, then despite the fact the tick's there, it's not listening to that avoidance. So you have to untick it, save it, go back, go to the map, and then that won't recalculate it because you're on the motorway and it thinks that's what you want to be doing anyway. So then you go back again, settings, navigation, avoidances, and avoid motorways, save, and back. So what you're doing is you're forcing it, you're telling it, you are definitely supposed to be not on the motorway. So I'm going to tell you to go on, and then I'm going to tell you to go off again, and then that will recalculate it, and it'll take you off. This does happen. So if you find yourself on the motorway and it doesn't say anything about it in the pack, pull over, come off at the next junction, do that, and that'll fix it 100% of the time, or 99.9% of the time. Then on from that, the issues that we get tend to be problems with the actual sort of the mapping or the routing side of it. So sometimes, or this has only happened a couple of times, but I have seen it before in the past, you turn your unit on, you go to your trip planner, you load it all up, and it just shows an absolute perfect straight line between each waypoint, literally like as the crow flies. So it's not routing you along the roads, it's just telling you this is how far it is, but it can't tell you how to get there. What that means is, at some point between transferring the file onto the unit and then the unit transferring it onto its route calculation bit, there's been an error of some kind. So what you want to do, you want to go into apps and trip planner, and then edit, delete, and you delete the route that's causing you an issue. Now don't worry, you're not actually deleting it. All you're deleting here is the trip planner section of it, so you're deleting the bit where it's already calculated where you're going to go. So you click delete, delete the selected trip, yes, and that's gone. And now you want to re-import it. So you click settings again, import, it finds it because it's still in the device, it'll import it, and then you can see it's actually calculating the route for you, and that will get past this sort of straight line issue. So if you see that, you go into Trip Planner, you delete it, then you re-import it, and then when you go, it's all going to come back. When it has straight lines on the map, so it would just be straight lines along here, these bits also don't show up because it can't tell you how far it is and how long it's going to take you. So if you ever see just blanks here, that means there's been that issue, and you just delete and re-import and it'll fix it in 30 seconds and then you're good to go. Other problems that we have, if it's not picking up satellites, this one isn't picking up satellites, but that's because we're inside. If it's not picking up satellites when you're outside, they do sometimes do that. Best bet, turn it off, turn it on, as with most bits of computers, most bits of computing. If that doesn't work, you just need to take the battery out. So on the BMW navs, there's two little screws down here. It will have come with a little screwdriver, if not your guide's probably got one. Just unscrew them, pop the cover off, take the battery out, leave it for 30 seconds, put the battery back in. On the other Garmins, so on the 590 and the 390s, there's a little catch there, which you twist, I think, and then it pops off, and you just unplug that, pop the battery out, pop it back in, and then that will reset it. Well, it won't reset it, sorry, it will restart it. So you don't lose all your data, but it just restarts it, and then that forces it to look for the satellites again. So that will fix that. If you start riding in the morning and it's just taking you round and round and round the houses, I think we've already touched on this, that just means it's taking you to the first waypoint. So you just either skip that or choose the next one, that's not a problem. And then the final issue that you might have, especially if you've recently updated the device, actually I haven't said that before, but before you come on tour, just say that in the pack, make sure you've updated it, got all the new maps on, all your free stuff, so you are 100% up to date with the new roads in Europe. If you go on Trip Planner, click go, all that sort of stuff, and either this screen doesn't show main roads, or the actual Trip Planner screen, when you go to the map, is sort of showing maybe just the motorways and just the big names of towns, but not the actual small roads, or it can't route you onto the smaller roads. That means there's been an issue with the main map file that's been updated onto here, or it might mean that you're in Morocco and you haven't bought the maps for Morocco, so it looks like there's a map on there, but actually it's just the motorways. The only thing you can do with that, plug the device back into a computer with Garmin Express, I think it is, and then you've got to redo the software update. Hotels aren't going to mind if you do that when you're away. Your guides have got laptops, they can do it as well. Do be prepared for it to be overnight, because a lot of these files are sort of 6-7 gigabytes, but you can just reinstall the map overnight and then that'll fix it as well. And as far as Garmin's go, that covers pretty much everything. They're not enormously difficult to use, but it is quite a good idea to go and practice before you come away. If you have any problems loading the routes up from your tour packs before you go, whether you're on an escorted trip or a self-guided one, just give us a ring. We can always help with stuff over the phone, or we're also happy you can just post us the device. We'll get it all set up for you and we'll send it back. And then when the guides are away on tour, they love being asked questions about sat navs, so feel free to pick their brains on it as well.